Welcome, welcome. Hello, hello, hello. I guess that's probably good. Okay, so welcome back. Hello. Let me see if I can get comments up. Live chat. Perfect. Hello, hello. Hi, Jess. Hello, everyone who's here. It's a couple minutes early. So let me first start by saying hello. Happy Wednesday. Glad we are here. Hi, Bildo. I'm so glad that I'm able to do this. I have to say that I was a little worried last night. We had heard that we were supposed to be getting like 3 days of rain starting yesterday. And yesterday, all day, it did not rain at all. Last night, we had huge thunderstorms and like really big thunderstorms all night, which was really kind of cool to watch. But I thought, oh shit, it's supposed to now rain for like 2 more days. We woke up this morning and it's been sunny and it's chilly. Slam my finger in the door. Ooh, colorful words. Yep. It's been chilly, but it's been sunny. So, I was a little worried that like we had internet issues kind of this morning, but so yay. I thought, oh no, not 2 weeks in a row where I can't do it outside, please. So here we are. So I'm so glad. Happy Wednesday. Let me check in by saying hi. I hope everyone is doing well. I'm doing pretty well. We are still in Texas. We're in Central Texas now. We are outside San Antonio in a place called Lake Hills, Texas. 80,000 winds here last night. Ooh, 80 mile an hour winds. Yeah, in an RV. Yes, yes, yes. Hi, Fatima. Did I just say Fatima? Like I don't know how to say Fatima. My brain is skipping. Okay. So we are outside of San Antonio, Texas. We're going to be here until the 15th of February. And I know someone has said, what is it? Oh, Michelle Erskine. I hope she's here tonight. Hi. Wanted to send me something that as a gift that had something to do with book club, and I'm really excited about that. But I felt really bad because we don't have the ability to have anything sent to us here anyway. A lot of times, if we are staying for a longer term, like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, this place we've been, we're going to be here for 3 weeks total, but they don't even have, it's kind of so remote that they don't even have, like the mail trucks don't even come here. So we would have to like rent a post office box in town. And because we only have the RV for transportation, it makes it kind of hard to do. So I told her if anybody has anything for me, that's so sweet. And what I can do is if you message me, when we get to a place that we're going to be there for a couple weeks at least, that that allows mail. A lot of places will let us like, order from Amazon and stuff and send it there. That's okay. I'll let you know that, this is an address that will be here for a couple weeks so that you can send it then. So I apologize about that. It's one of the things that I wasn't quite sure how I was going to figure out when we were out on the road. But what we have seen is that some people allow it and some people, don't. It's weird. This place, I would think it's big enough that they would allow people to have mail here and stuff because they actually have people live here annually, like during the whole year. But apparently the mail trucks don't even come down here. It's pretty remote. So it is what it is. It is kind of frustrating. Yes, it is. But other than that, we are doing really well. The RV is working wonderfully since we got it fixed. It's doing awesome. And we are slowly starting to organize it in a better way. I think, the first couple months have been wading through all the stuff that we brought because we weren't sure were we going to need all of that or not. I do have to say that I think we're going to be having a sale soon, a crystal sale, when we get to some place that we can actually mail stuff out soon. Because it's we had a vision in our head of being able to like go to flea markets and set up tables, but that's been really hard without transportation. So we're not sure. 9 months in and still downsizing. Well, I know it's not just me then. So we'll see. I have decks that are for sale. So if anybody is interested in like some used decks or something, let me know. It's a learning experience. All of this is a learning experience, and we're kind of figuring it out as we go. Okay, now on to book club. Some of the van life people use UPS. I can see that, but again, our problem is that we don't have access to transportation besides our RV, and we're figuring out how difficult that is, and we might be trying to change to that soon, but I don't want to excuse me. I don't want to say too much until we know what's going on, but that was kind of short-sighted of us to do it this way, and we're kind of figuring that out now. But so like we can't just jump in our car and go up to the UPS store. We have to like have people deliver stuff to us, or once a week we pack everything up and get ready to move, and we go get groceries in town and stuff like that. But we do use Instacart and stuff like that too. So it's a learning experience. We'll figure it out. Yes, we have our bicycles. We bought bicycles, and I am slowly, I assume I'm starting to lose weight. I don't know for sure because I don't ever weigh myself really anyway. But I am doing a lot more walking and moving than I was for the last year, at least, while living at home. So I'm hoping. But to me, it's about health anyway, not really the weight part. Although I would like to look better for me when I look in the mirror. But anyway. Okay, so we are at the point in the book where we are finishing up chapter 3. We are going to begin chapter 3 where, hi Stephen, where Uther and Igraine have, hi Ember, have their first real meeting alone, right? And then we are going to hopefully finish, go through chapter 4 today, although it's a pretty big chapter. A lot kind of happens. Well, a big thing. We'll talk about it. Okay, so my usual, hi Ghetto Country, my usual warning. If you have not read this book up to chapter 4, through chapter 4, we are going to be talking about everything that happens in it. The characters, the character growth. There is going to be lots of spoilers here. So if you do not want to hear spoilers, now is the time for you to step out. And no hard feelings. Just understand that we are going to be doing lots of spoilers through chapter 4 of the Mists of Avalon book. Okay, having said that, here we go. We ended off when Ambrosius, the king Ambrosius, has died. And they go to the mass the night that the day that Ambrosius dies. They do sunset mass that night for Ambrosius. It starts off, it's funny. This gives us, I love, again, there's so much about this book that I love. One of them is the look into the different religions, Christianity versus paganism, and at least I would say the kind of evangelical of today, Christianity, that they talk about, and what is different about that through paganism and even non-evangelical Christians who are not judgmental with other people and stuff like that is very different from what we're talking about here. So my first point was what their God, meaning the Christian God of the time, has to say about death. And Igraine is kind of taken aback by this mass. They have this great king, and they all loved him, and he was a very good king, and he was well liked, and he was loved, and he tried to do the best he could. And Igraine cannot believe how they are talking about him after his death here in this mass. It says Igraine, who had been taught in the Holy Isle that death was no more than the gateway to new birth, could not understand how could Christians have such fear and trembling at going to this eternal peace. She remembered Father Columba chanting some of his doleful psalms, and they say that a lot in here, that some of the psalms, they keep doing these horrible, sad, doleful psalms in honor somehow of the king's death. Yes, their God was supposed to be a God of fear and punishment as well. She could understand how a king, for the good of his people, might have to do some things which would lie heavy on his conscience, right? So sometimes a leader has to do some things that later he may say, if it had just been my personal choice, I may not have done it that way. If even she could understand and forgive that, how could a merciful God be more bigoted and vengeful than the least of his mortals, than this woman, Igraine, who did not grow up in the Christian faith, and she could understand that he may have to do some things that were against his religion, right? How could their God not supposed to? She supposed it was one of their mysteries. So we've talked about how she grew up in the Isle of Avalon, but she was not privy to all of their mysteries. She didn't get to learn all of their mysteries because she was not supposed to be a priestess or a druid. And so she tries, eventually she slips out. Once the service ends, she slips away, and Gorlois kind of introduces her to the wives of all the other dukes. And so she sits talking to all these wives, and she doesn't really like what they all have to say either, right? They ask about Igraine's child and talk about the efficiency of bronze amulets against winter fevers and the charm of laying a priest's mass book in the cradle against rickets. So I thought this was hilarious. The hens, right? I thought this was hilarious because today we very often, as pagans, hi, Lady Blind Wolf, we get kind of strapped in, and we get picked on or made fun of for woo-woo stuff, having amulets or talismans that we believe give us power or energy, right? And back in this time, it is the Christians who are talking about laying a priest's book in, and that's supposed to take away rickets or stave away the rickets. And an amulet that is supposed to heal or keep away certain diseases. So instead, Igraine, who I really like because she is well-spoken and she speaks up and kind of speaks her mind. She doesn't sit there and be quiet in the face of all this. She said, it's bad food which causes rickets. My sister, who is a healer priestess, told me that no child who is suckled for a full 2 years by a healthy mother ever suffers from rickets, but only if it is given to an ill-nourished wet nurse or weaned too soon and fed on gruel. I call that foolish superstition, one of the wives, Gwyneth, says. The Mass book is holy and efficient against all illnesses, but particularly those of little children who have been baptized against the sins of their fathers and have committed no sins of their own. So again, this is one of those things that I just think was really funny, that back in their time, the Christians are the ones who have these symbols and these superstitions of how to keep disease away. And the Druids and the people from the Isle of Avalon actually use science and medicine, and they know that rickets is caused by a vitamin deficiency, and so if you do it right, if you suckle your child long enough, your child won't get rickets. So it's funny that just so happens to come up, and I think it's the reverse is kind of funny. common sense. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Oh, wait. The back in the olden times, the midwives would use talismans, and then it was outlawed because women weren't allowed to have the proper medical training. Of course not, because how could they possibly understand that with our weak minds? So Igraine gets annoyed at the kind of ramblings of these women who obviously don't know very much, and she slips away. She's like, get me the fuck out of here. She waits till kind of a lull in the conversation and kind of makes an excuse that nobody really pays attention to because nobody's really paying attention to her anyway, and she slips away. And she goes right back to you, and I think that it's sad that Christians to this day still believe that some genetic illnesses are generational curses. Yeah, they absolutely do. Yeah, or we won't get into some of, but today there's lots of different things that come about that, people think are superstition and that in our time, it's some of us, some pagan people and some people who, and it's also Christians in their own way. Some think some weird superstitions, but it's kind of reversed a lot in that pagans think sometimes that some of this woo-woo stuff is more important than science and health and actual knowledge of, medical-based things. It's interesting, the flip. So she slips away. She goes to the back of the lowest pagan education. Yes, exactly. She goes to the back of the church and finds a graveyard. There's a graveyard in the back of the church. In those days, all churches had their own graveyards. I had last year on my COSIS, and it was good to drink my own urine. Yeah, right? And that would have seemed like such an odd superstition, right? Or the where now sometimes people put other healthy people's feces in their own intestines. That's seen as something very that's a woo-woo thing, even though that's based on a medical thing too. Newest, an Appalachian believer in Kentucky, that if a pregnant woman attends a funeral, she will in fact lose the baby. That's kind of silly. Okay, so in those days, all churches had graveyards in the back of their churches, usually in the back, sometimes in the front. But all churches had their own graveyards because that's how they considered it holy ground. It was kind of attached to their church ground. And so she comes upon their graveyard. I love the description of the apple. There's an apple orchard behind it. What number am I on? There's an apple orchard behind the church, and the apple blossoms are flowering, and she smells that sweet apple blossom. Now, any of you who have smelled apple blossoms, gosh, that sweet, fresh scent. I love that scent. That's one of my favorite scents too. So we know that it's probably somewhere between like mid-April to mid-May at this time when Ambrosius has died, because that's about when the apple blossoms start to blossom in the outside cemetery, right? I am a person that, we'll talk about it, but I'm a person that doesn't want to be buried because I don't want to waste the land, because I feel like it's just my body, and I'm not really there anymore. But graveyard is attached to the church cemetery. Yes. Yes. And she finds Uther in there, who is grieving. He's weeping. And so the next question is, why is Uther so upset? There's a specific reason, not just that Ambrosius has died, but there's a specific reason that Uther is so upset and is really grieving about it in the graveyard here. And it is, I'll read about it. I know I feel bad that hi Donna. I feel bad that I ask questions, and then because of the lag, I don't want to he thinks of him as a dad. Yep, that's true. there is Igraine and Uther are in agreement about the service, though. So he says, at first, I will say, at first he's like, oh, sure, now I have the, Gorlois' wife here, and why don't you just go back and tell him how it was weeping like a child? He's embarrassed to be caught weeping. And hi, Tina. That's okay. I know I'm loving the book too again. I love that I'm in rereading it and learning. I'm learning a whole lot that I don't know if I caught the first time without having the experience I have now. And she says, no, of course I'm not going to do that. How horrible it would be if one didn't weep for the man who practically raised him and was such a great king to them. And do you think my husband Gorlois does not grieve? And he looks at it. Has anyone caught that Jeopardy has asked a couple questions on this book? Oh, really? Have they? I missed that. I'll have to look it up. And he says, okay, that's true. And he talks about a situation he had. And this was, I was not going to read this one, but I like this. It says, that's true. When I was a young man, I slew the Saxon chief Horsa in the field after many battles where he had challenged me and then escaped. And I wept for his death because he was a gallant man. And that made me think of like the Native American and indigenous peoples everywhere, that they honor the death if they have to kill a deer or kill, their prey. They honor that prey because they did a great battle and they deserve worthiness. And, so it made me like Uther even more, that he talks about this kind of honor in death. But he says, and yet, when I heard the Holy Father in there prating of judgment and eternal damnation before the throne of God, and I remembered how good and pious Ambrosius was, and how he loved and feared God, and never skimped to do a kind or honorable thing, sometimes I find this God of theirs too much to endure. And he says that several times, this God of theirs, like it's not his God. And I almost wish I could listen without damnation to the wise Druids, who talk of no judgment, but what a man brings on himself by the way he lives. If the holy bishop speaks truth, Ambrosius now lies in the fires of hell, not to be redeemed until the end of the world. I know little of heaven, but I could wish to thank my king there. So in the pre-size, they're saying that Ambrosius is a sinner, and so he's lying in the eternal damnation of hell, waiting for Jesus to return. So that they talk about, at that time, they really believed that when you died, they were all waiting for Jesus's return, and in the meantime, they were sitting in hell. Which is a horrible, like, why would God do that to you? If a God loved you, and I guess I don't understand either. I always have a really hard time with that old way of thinking, that the Christians really fear God. We talked before about the fear God thing, and they're the angry God and the punishing God, and that was how they kept people in line, was through fear and what would happen to you. And I just see that as sad, really, really sad. And so they talk about this. They talk about religion. They talk about matters of state. In other words, who's going to become the king? If their God loved them, why did they die of disease, right? Yes. They have a great discussion here, Uther and Igraine. And Igraine is happy that he is actually talking to her about stuff. He asks her where did you learn all this wisdom? First of all, I want to say it's not Jesus I have a problem with. It's with this fan club. Yes, so much. It's with the judgmental people who claim to be Christians that, and instead of following Jesus's Jesus's path, they throw stones and judge and all that kind of stuff. And the second thing I want to bring up is that people seem to overlook the Bible is basically a real book for the Christians, not for other religions. Yeah, absolutely. For sure. Definitely. And I have absolutely, and I know I've said this before a lot, but just in case you're new here and you haven't seen a whole lot of my other videos, I have nothing against Christians of today as long as they do not feel it necessary to judge me for my religion. They can. Hi, Kay. Kay had a birthday this week, so happy birthday, Kay. As long as they don't feel it necessary to judge me and my religion, then if it works for them, awesome. I'm glad it works for them. It doesn't work for me, but I hope that they find something that works as passionately for them as what I do works for me. And if they can let me do what I do, awesome. I have no problem with that whatsoever. It's the people who like actively seek us out to talk about how we're going to die in the damnation pit of hell and hellfire that really kind of irk me. Okay. So they discuss matters of state. They discuss religion. Uther talks to her. Sorry, I shouldn't have done this. Jen witnessed my Christian person interaction online today. Yes, I did. Right, Kim? All right, Kim posted something online that I thought was great and right on. And of course, someone had to come in and talk about how, you're going to go to the fiery pits of hell if you don't include Jesus in your spirituality. Okay. I laughed at the image. And she is still actively posting. Oh, welcome. Sometimes you just have to. You did very well, Kim. I have to say, your response to her was great, and she just continues. And that's what I mean. The people who just continue and they won't let you be you. I mean, you didn't post on her page. You posted on your page. And so those people who feel it necessary then to come into a post on your page that you posted yourself and talk about eternal damnation and how you're going to hell for it, that's you know what, you've crossed a line now. I don't go onto your page and start talking about how paganism works for me and how dare you not feel the same thing that works for me should work for everyone. It's just kind of crazy. My Jewish chef loves to tell me that they will likely be there first. I thought Peter, if you know Peter at all personally, he picks on me all the time. Like if I stub my toe or something, he'll go, yeah, see, God's punishing him. And as a joke, but only as a joke. Okay, so they have this great discussion. They have this great back and forth. They have kind of a melding of the minds, and it's a great discussion. And she brings up that she's from the Isle of Avalon, and that in the Isle of Avalon, women are encouraged to help people. And she brings up her sister Vivian. It's like someone walking into your house uninvited to lecture you. Yes, exactly. It drives me crazy. I honestly, usually it depends. If I don't know them at all, I usually just either block the comment or erase the comment because I'm like, you know what? I don't want to engage. I might try once like Kim did and say, well, I respect your opinion and all that stuff. But if that doesn't work, then I'm not going to get it because you know what? I know I'm not going to change their mind. I also know they're not going to change my mind. So now it's a waste of time thing. And I'm like, yeah, thanks. But now I'm just going to block you because it's not worth my time to try to change your opinion. Forget it. Happy birthday. We just had a pagan meetup in Grand Rapids, Michigan that the local news covered, and the good Christians on Facebook are currently losing their minds. There's a whole, at some point, book, but at some point, I would like to have a discussion about because I think so many people are turning to spirituality outside of a church building or a traditional religion. I think there's a lot more fear surrounding it again, and there's some flare-ups going on of true fear, fear-based hatred, and fear-based awfulness. And there's a big story right now that has been continually going on, and some of you, I'm sure, are aware of it, about a woman who, a teacher of, I can't remember what subject it was, but in a Catholic school, who invited, maybe economics or something, invited two business owners who happened to be women who were pagans and owned a crystal shop or, metaphysical store to talk about their business. And they handed out crystals. And they did not try to preach to them. They didn't, but they just said this is, a lot of people believe that crystals have energy. Hello. Have energy, and this crystal people believe might have this kind of energy, and so like amethyst and citrine and stuff. And the teacher was fired for allowing these women to speak about owning their business. And the so-called Christians in the community have now risen up and said incredibly awful things to these women business owners. And some just, I can't even believe the hatred that comes out of fear. It makes me very sad. But I think one of the people like that posted on their wall or something, called them cunts, and how dare you, and Jesus is this, and then proceeded to be hateful and horrible and like threatening. And there's a lot of that rising up again. So we have to be vigilant in trying to do the best we can. It's funny being in the South. It's one thing that I have really liked is I have personally not felt, although I will say I have not come out with my, I wear my pentacle a lot and stuff, but I don't come out and try to preach to people. That's not just that that's not who I am. I don't hide who I am, but I don't come out, in my robes and stuff in front of people. But I have met a lot of people who I would consider to be on the other side of the aisle, who are very nice people, and we just don't talk about, like, I don't bring up that I'm a liberal Democrat while I'm sitting here in Texas. I don't do that because I don't think that would be helpful. I don't see any value in that. And instead, it would be really nice if we just tried to focus on the things that we could get along with for a little while and, like, I don't know, be good to each other a little. Anyways, let's get back to the book. Sorry, guys. But it is relevant, right? Okay. Yeah. Very Christian behavior, yeah. I look back on that now because I used to use that whenever I was anxious. And now I realize even back then I was doing witchcraft. Yes. Okay. Anyways, I'm not saying, by the way, that I don't think you should stand up for what you believe in. I absolutely do. I just don't think there's any use or value in shoving what you believe into people's faces that believe something different. I would rather try to connect with them on a level that they see my heart before they see a label of what they think I am. And then, when they find out that I'm pagan and nature-based, I want them to be surprised and think, wow, I thought she was a good person, at first at least. And then really maybe question, wow, maybe what I thought about these people was not quite correct all this time. maybe I can think of them as someone that we could work with to do things that we both feel are right. How horrible would that be, right? My mom came to my house and got preachy about what she believes personally, but I knew it was a jab towards me. Then I got defensive and preachy, so disappointed in myself, but I had to speak. But sometimes you have to speak your piece. So my mom did that a couple times too, and sometimes you just have to, if they're pushing it in your face, sometimes you have to speak back. There's a time and place for conversation, which is not always now. Exactly. And that's okay. And either way, it's okay. I have been surprised, and I would like to think that we could be surprised if we could set aside our differences sometimes and just focus on the things that we have in common sometimes. Jesus said, love your enemies. So even if they consider you to be an enemy, yeah, they should not respond. Yeah, they should respond in love and not hate, which is lately that seems like a difficult thing to do. Okay. Lantern time because it's getting dark. Okay. And we're still on 3. Damn it. I knew this was going to happen. We might have to go into another week to finish chapter 4 because it's such a important, but let's go. Okay. So they discuss religion. Uther says he wishes that Ambrosius had a son too. Then there would be no question on who would replace him. So Uther thinks the same things that Gorlois thinks, right? So we see that there is some similarity in how that they think. This is not something that Uther is like, I want to be king. This is something that has kind of been thrust upon him, but he is willing to shoulder it because he wants to do what's best for his country, his land. And so he says in a couple different ways, I wish he had a son too, then I wouldn't have to worry about this crap. Because he's not the sort to try to power grab everything. That's not at all what he's about or what he's doing. Uther weeps in front of Igraine, which I think makes him vulnerable and less scary to her. So it's the first time that she really sees him as something other than, this man that is a stranger that could be thrust upon her again. A new person she has to now try to marry and get used to and everything. She kind of sees him as a human being, as a vulnerable human being. Igraine dries Uther's tears with what? Because that becomes important. She, at the end of their conversation here, he is talking about the power thing and how he really doesn't want the power. It's not about the power for him. And he kind of hopes that he doesn't have to kill Lot because he just doesn't want that. He begins to weep again. And she takes off her facial veil. So at the time, I don't know if it was because she was at her veil, exactly. At the time, if it was because they were at a funeral or if when they were out in public, they were supposed to wear a facial veil, but she takes off her veil. And specifically, it talks about as if he was a child, her child. She begins to wipe his tears with her veil. And that's a big deal. With the lives, yay! I miss you, Uncle Badger. Thomas. Okay. So she wipes the veil, or she wipes the tears with the veil like she would a child. And then Gorlois catches them right then, right as she has her veil in her hand, wiping tears from this other man's. Now she has been warned not to associate with this man because Gorlois thinks of him as a woman hungry snake kind of, and here she is in this graveyard wiping Uther's tears with her veil. Which of course is not going to go very well, right? Also, then they of course are startled. Uh-oh, here's Gorlois. Igraine goes to jump down, and she jumps they're sitting on this branch, this of the apple tree. She jumps and her skirt catches on the branch. And so as she stands up, her skirt is hanging kind of on the branch and showing her underwear, her linen underwear, which is long at the time. It's not like she was, showing all the way up to her ass, but it says above her knee. So at the time, whoo, this is kind of scandalous. She looks like she's undressed kind of here in front of Gorlois, her husband. So that's a bad thing, right? Where are we? Number 4. Uther becomes very formal. So what does Uther do? Uther becomes really formal. Oh, well, he offers this kind of quick explanation. Oh, well, she and thanks so much, and bows and exits stage right. He leaves very quickly, and he also makes sure that his face is in the shadows. Again, he's conscious of the fact that men at this time are not really the weepy type, and he does not want to show that he has had emotions and been crying to Gorlois. So he becomes very formal, says this quick explanation, bows, and he exits stage right. He's out of here. Gorlois scolds Igraine, right? He says to her, like, what are you freaking doing? I told you ahead of time not to be here, not to show yourself with this guy. He says specifically, my lady, you should be more careful and avoid gossip. I told you to keep away from Uther. His reputation is such that no chaste women should be seen in private conversation with him. She gets kind of pissy. She's like, you know what, asshole? Okay, and I was going to talk about this interaction. I like this interaction a lot, even though he hits her, which is not acceptable. But this interaction is so such a real interaction, because you and I know when we get caught doing something we weren't supposed to be doing, what do we like, kind of, most of us go above and beyond. We kind of over exaggerate and talk about huge gestures and to try to, because especially if we kind of know that we fucked up, right? We're like, oh, please, like, it's so bad, right? Well, this is what Igraine does. Igraine turned and said angrily, is that what you think of me? That I am the sort of woman who would slip away to couple with a strange man like a beast in a field? Hold on, where's my other one? I need light. It gets dark so quick here. Light. Here we go. Do you think I was lying with him on the branch of that tree like some bird of the bough? Would you like to inspect my gown to see whether it's rumpled from laying with him on the ground? So she, goes to the extreme and responds with an over-exaggeration. And what does he do? He raises his hand and smacks her across the face. Gorlois lifts his hand, strikes her. Not really hard, but strikes her across the mouth. And so they get into it back and forth. It says read to the end of the chapter and discuss. It's 43 minutes in. Damn it. We're never going to get through 4. We're going to have to, I'll talk a little bit about it by the time we get to the end. But because I do think it's important these interactions end up to be very important, though. So, he says, you will not play he hits her. You will not play the shrew with me, madam. I told you to avoid him. Obey me, which of course is really going to piss her off, right? She's from the Isle of Avalon. She's not one of these British born women who is used to being subservient to her man, right? I think you honest and chaste, but I would not trust you to that man, nor here you made the subject of the tongues of women. So obviously the women have been talking, or, he's warning her. If the women find you here, they're going to talk about, you have been in alone with another man that wasn't your husband. That's a bad thing. Where am I? Surely there is no more evil mind than that of a good woman, unless perhaps it is the mind of a priest, Igraine says wrathfully. She rubbed her mouth where Gorlois' blow had knocked her lip against her teeth. How dare you lay hands upon me? When I betray you, you may beat the flesh from my bones, but I won't be beaten for talk. Do you think, in the name of all the gods, that we were talking of love? Might be a comparison with the Saxon sensibilities compared to the original Celts. Yes, 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 definitely. Yes, absolutely, because they are very much talking about Saxons. And he says, and what were you talking about with that man at this hour in God's name? What the hell were you doing there alone talking to this man about? She says, we talked of many things, Igraine says, and mostly of Ambrosius in heaven, and yes, of heaven, and what one could hope to find in the afterlife. And Gorlois looks at her like, bullshit, right? That I find unlikely, when he could not show respect for the dead by staying through the whole Holy Mass, right? Because Uther left. He can't stand that they're talking about how his king, who he loves, Ambrosius, is in hell dealing with the shit of hell, because that doesn't make sense to him, right? It's okay. 3 was a hefty and longer chapter. We have plenty of time to discuss the book. Yes, 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 yes. And I love chapter 4 too, and I can't wait to get to it, but I don't want to skip through chapter 3 here. He was sickened, as I was, by all those doleful psalms. Again, that word doleful psalms. As if they were mourning the worst of men instead of the best of kings. So again, Uther and Igraine have something very much in common, in that they think Ambrosius was a good king. And how dare the priests talk about how horrible it is and mourn his death as this horrible thing. He's going to be in the pits of hell until Jesus returns, because that's where you go to like sit at this time. This is what they think. And how dare they? How dare they do that? And how can you think of your God that way? Before God, all men are miserable sinners, Igraine, and in the eyes of Christ, a king is no better than other mortals. Yes, yes, she says impatiently. I have heard your priests say so, and also they spend much time and labor to tell us that God is love and our goodly Father in heaven. Yet I notice they are very careful not to fall into his hands, and they mourn for those who go to their eternal peace, exactly as if those as for those who go to be sacrificed on the blood altar of the great raven herself. I tell you, Uther and I were talking of what the priests know of heaven, which is, I think, not very much. So she says to Gorlois, now she's pissed, obviously, because now she's kind of talking about his religion, talking about his priest, talking about his God. She's going on and on, like, look, asshole, you're God and you're priest, and you're the one who wants this religion, and now you're going to live with the fact that I was talking about, how horrible I think it is, with someone else who thinks the same. If you and Uther spoke of religion, it is for certain the only time that man of blood ever did so, Gorlois says. Igraine said, and now she was angry. He was weeping, Gorlois, weeping for the king who had been as a father to him. And if it shows respect for the dead to sit and listen to the caterwauling of a priest, then may I never have such respect. How does Gorlois know? How does Gorlois know what? Wait, what did I miss? How does Gorlois know what? I envied Uther that he was a man and could come and go as he chose, and for sure, if I had been born a man, I would never have sat peacefully and hearkened to yonder foolishness in the church. But I was not free to go, being dragged thither at the word of a man who thinks more of priests and psalms than of the dead. So she's like, I wish I was a guy so I could have left too, because this is ridiculous, right? They reached the door of their lodging. Gorlois, his face turning dark and with wrath, pushed her angrily within. About Uther speaking of religion. Oh, because she just said to him, we spoke of religion, we spoke of God, we spoke of, and he's like, if he really spoke of religion, this is the first time ever, because he's a piece of crap, in other words. He pushed her angrily within. You will not speak to me in that voice, lady, or I shall beat you in earnest. In other words, I'll give you a beating. Now she's really pissed. How dare you? She is from Avalon. She is not used to this shit. Igraine realized that she had actually bared her teeth like a hunting cat. Right? Sometimes we get so pissed. Bared her teeth like a hunting cat. Where the hell am I? Oh, and her voice hissed as she said, touch me at your peril, Gorlois, or I shall teach you that a daughter of the Holy Isle is no man's slave nor servant. Yeah, you try that, motherfucker, right? That's basically, you go right ahead. See what happens to you if you do that. Gorlois opens his mouth for an angry retort, and for a moment Igraine thought he would strike her again. Instead, with an effort, he mastered his anger and turns away from her. It is not fitting that I stand here brawling when my king and my lord lies still unburied. You may sleep here tonight if you are not afraid to be alone. If you are so, I shall have you escorted to the house of Actorius to sleep with Flavilla. My men and I will fast and pray until sunrise tomorrow, when Ambrosius will be laid in the earth to rest. The baring of teeth, yes, was really bad. Yeah, sign of madness. Yeah, definitely. Now here she's only 19. So, but she is a daughter of Avalon, and she is not going to take that shit from anybody, including her husband. However, Gorlois, being older and wiser, and hopefully being able to get a hold of his temper maybe a little bit better, finally gets it under control a little bit and says, okay, go in. If you're okay to be alone, go ahead and go to bed. He has got to go and fast with his men at the church there until his king is buried. They are not going to eat or lay with their wives or any of that stuff. Igraine looked at him with surprise and a curious growing contempt. So, for fear of the dead man's shade, even though he called it by another name and thought of it as a respect, he would not eat nor drink nor lie with a woman until his king was buried. Christians said they were free of the superstitions of the Druids, but they had their own, and Igraine felt that these were even more distressing, being separated from nature. Suddenly, she was very glad that this night she need not lie with Gorlois. No, she said, I am not afraid to be alone. So that's the end of chapter 3. The end of chapter 3 is they have this huge fight. Uther and her have had their first encounter alone and kind of have felt that first connection, and have found that they have a lot to talk about, that they feel the same way about important things. And Gorlois catches them, and they have this encounter that is not a good encounter, that is a back and forth, that is quite an argument. And that's the end of chapter 3. I do want to just touch on chapter 4 because it's such a good chapter. So immediately, the first thing we find in chapter 4, as chapter 4 starts, is that as a result of her talk with Uther and her fight with Gorlois, we find that Igraine has decided what about her husband's religion. Like, the first bit of the chapter is Igraine has made a decision now about Christianity, about her husband's religion, and that is, for years, she had struggled to compromise with the religion Gorlois followed. Why would she be afraid to be alone when she's been without him for months, right, at Tintagel? Now, but she's not at Tintagel, right? So she's had 4 years, though, to get to know Tintagel. And what we didn't touch on was, that she hasn't been out in Londinium until chapter 4. But she's in a strange place, and it's not her house. It's not her city, and she doesn't know this city, and she doesn't know the inner workings of the city or really how it works. She hasn't really been out in the city until into chapter 4, Gorlois sends her shopping and stuff. So that's the first time she's had any interaction with Londinium, really. So I can see where he would wonder if she would not want to be there alone, because it's a strange place. She doesn't know it. For years, she had struggled to compromise with the religion Gorlois followed. Now she knew that while she would show his religion a courteous respect so as not to anger him, and indeed, her early teaching had taught her that all gods were one, and no one should ever mock the name by which another found God. So I love that phrase right there. No one should ever mock the name by which another found God. Wouldn't that be great if everyone could just do that? That's part of what we were talking about earlier, right? She would try no more to be as pious as he was. A wife should follow her husband's gods, and she would pretend to do so in a seemly and proper fashion, but she would never again fall prey to the fear that their all-seeing, all-vengeful God could have power over her. So she has decided, yeah, I'm done with that. I'm not following your Christian faith anymore. It just doesn't seem right to her. There's no reason for it. There's so many things that come up that she's like, I just don't get it. I just don't get it. Why is your God so vengeful against someone who has been trying to, Ambrosius, the king, who has been such a good king, who has been trying to do such a good king, who was obviously a good man, and now you all have to sit around and keep vigil in case something happens to his soul before he's buried, and all this stuff. She's like, that's it. I'm done. I'm gonna pretend. Fine, I'll pretend for you, but I'm not really gonna try to follow your religion because I don't agree with it. So that is the beginning of chapter 4. Is she's like, that's it. I'm done. What we are gonna find as we go through chapter 4, which, by the way, click the like button. We have 22 people on. That's awesome. If you click the like button, that means that YouTube will kind of distribute it to more people, and maybe more people will find us and come on and join our discussion. What we find through chapter 4, which is so awesome and interesting, is that Igraine has some incredible dreams. We're going to talk about the fact that one of those dreams is not actually a dream, but is what we would call today, she astro travels, she astro projects, and sees a past life of hers, that her and Uther were together in a past life, ruling over, it turns out, Atlantis, which is super cool. The lost city of Atlantis, right? So we are going to just say that next week we will talk about chapter 4. What I would like you to do is reread chapter 4. Because probably all of you have read it now, but reread it again and really try to picture in your mind when she goes through the dream. Merlin says he's going to give her a dream, right? We'll talk about this next week more. But really kind of take each piece of that dream and close your eyes and picture it. There's so much to that astral projection dream that is really interesting and really cool spiritually, that she gets to see this. So that's, yes, possible connection. Yes, and yes, definitely. That it's really cool if you can really shut your eyes and picture this scene of both of them in the past. It's great. I will say that the other thing is, it's funny, I've been tying a lot of stuff, synchronicities start to happen. A lot of synchronicities have been going on regarding stuff like Atlantis and the Egyptian pyramids, which people are very much starting to think were built not by the Egyptians, but were occupied by the Egyptians, that the Egyptians got there and that they were there. There is a show on Netflix called Ancient Apocalypse or something like that. And it starts to delve into some of that kind of stuff. If you are bored and don't know what to watch, I would highly suggest checking that out. Some very interesting things. I had shared something about a lost city that was an underground city in Turkey. And we did learn this week that Turkey and Syria had a horrible, horrible earthquake. So I do want to say that I have been sending energy this week. If you want to, join me and send some energy for the horrible, just awful earthquake. It makes me really think of that underground city. Like, I wonder if it's even able to be gotten into anymore. Was super interesting, but who knows, it may have collapsed now. Just feel terrible about that. I generally have to reread at least once. Yeah, right? A Freemason friend reckons about them covering up some of the underwater sonar scans where Atlantis may have been. Oh, that's cool, Thomas. That is really cool. They say the Sphinx has water erosion and is a lot older, yes, than the Egyptian head, right? Yes. So send energy to them. I will also say that, just so you all know, what did I do with it? Now I can't see it. Oh, here it is. So this particular stone is the stone that I'm going to be leaving at Uvalde. Those of you who have been following our journey, you know that that I'm going to be stopping at some of the tragic sites that have happened in America along my journey, and one of them is Uvalde, where the school shooting happened. I have been putting energy into this stone because I'm going to be leaving stones for peace, peaceful, calming, comforting, healing energy, because I believe that the sites themselves need to be cleansed and then start to give an comfort and healing in order to kind of move on. And so this stone, if you want to give energy to this stone, it's going to be left at Uvalde at this site of the school shooting when I go there probably next week. And I have a whole container of quartz that these are the stones that I give daily energy to, and I'm going to be leaving one at each site that I go to as I go across when I feel like a place needs healing because of some tragic thing that has been going on, either a shooting or otherwise. I started with the place where Emmett Till was found and lynched because that place definitely needed healing. And my next stop is Uvalde, Texas, where the shooting happened. So please give that some energy. We will come back next week and discuss more in depth chapter 4, and then we'll go on from there and do chapter 5 is only like 10 pages or something. So after this week, we will continue. And I'm so glad. I really am liking being able to discuss each chapter. This in depth is great, and I hope that you guys are enjoying it. And please, I know we haven't had a whole lot of comments on the event pages, but if you have questions, if you have subjects that you were like, didn't really understand that part, or I didn't know what to think of it, ask your questions on the event page, and we'll bring them up and discuss them together. I know I haven't done enough work on the event pages and on Facebook. If not on Facebook, then comment on the prior video. Comment on this video if you're reading for next week's stuff and you're like, okay, I didn't understand that, or I have a question about that. Feel free to comment on here, and I will bring that up and we can discuss it. Thank you, honey. I appreciate it. And so thank you guys for coming. And I'm so glad to be back. I'm sorry I missed last week. Was literally freezing and yuck. It was awful. So yay. Some thought that the megaliths on the western coast of Europe are a lot older. Oh, I'm so excited. Yes, there's a lot of cool things in there for sure. So the other thing is if you all would, without saying too much, because I don't want to betray him, but send energy to my oldest son. He's making a really big decision in his life, and it's just a really big, life-changing, altering decision. So if you could send energy to him, I would appreciate it. I love you guys so much, and I will see you next week. Good night, my friends.